I know it can be difficult for who people aren't of an English-speaking background. One such person that springs to mind is Arabic-speaking director who had a restaurant that had failed. So he'd come to the country, started a restaurant for himself to try and make ends meet, and that restaurant wasn't trading as well as it could have post-COVID. So he had a whole bunch of suppliers and people that the company owed money to who were chasing him and pursuing him with demand letters, and he couldn't understand the language. So I basically took that step to contact those suppliers for him, make them aware of the liquidation process, and also ease his frustrations and anxiety with the whole process. And he was very thankful and very grateful. It may seem like a simple job that we do on these liquidations, but it was about going that extra mile to convey in the Arabic language to him and make sure that he's aware that this is what's happening and there isn't anything that he overly needs to be concerned about. Hello everyone, my name is Ibrahim. People call me Ibby. I'm a manager at O'Brien Palmer. I've been here for just over 2 years in the East Side team, which is the team that works for Daniel and Ahmed, and we, alongside Clement, we oversee a team of about 8 to 9 staff members. Our team is primarily deals with corporate insolvencies on a day-to-day basis, restructuring appointments, liquidations, administrations, various receiverships from time to time. We generally operate on a very large volume and scale basis, which means we receive a lot of appointments on a week-to-week basis. We pride ourselves on being able to filter through those appointments and extract value out of them as quickly as possible before we move on to the next, given that we're such a high volume and high turnover team. What that means is when we're meeting these directors, we're trying to understand what their position is, what their company is, where they've sort of come from and the financial difficulties they've faced up until that point, and trying to find the best way forward for these directors and for these companies. It's not always doom and gloom, and we certainly have a lot of good stories as well as stories where these companies have sort of failed, but we've tried to help them ease off into a deregistration process and not a long and terrifying process for them. One particular case that springs to mind was a small hairdressing business that we got appointed over as a restructuring process. This company had a very poor taxation compliance history, and they had been through a fair share of accountants and advisors up until they had come to see us for some advice and, around their restructuring. The ATO unfortunately were aware of how bad their compliance had been, but were unaware of the steps the company had taken to try and fix that and move forward out of an insolvent position. It was a very difficult process negotiating with the ATO and with creditors to get them to try and see the director's side of what had happened to the company. But essentially it came down to the last day where the ATO had been adamant on deciding to vote against this particular restructuring plan that this director had genuinely put up to try and save the business, and we had successfully negotiated with the ATO to explain our position and the director's position as best as we could, and thankfully the plan was accepted and the company is making these repayments and continuing to trade at this point. It's funny that I fell into insolvency because growing up I was a bit of a class clown. I used to be the ones to make my friends laugh, and I never saw myself being in an accounting role or a business role at that. I thought I'd end up in something more of a social work or a health related role, and I certainly had considered that coming out of school. As I entered into my university degree and I eventually accepted business and accounting at UTS, I did an insolvency subject, which opened my eyes to the possibility of helping businesses and people, and at the same time continuing along the lines of the business role which I had started out in. And it definitely piqued my interest, and from that, just that one subject alone, which I did in that term, I considered myself for an insolvency role as a graduate. I feel like I was made for an insolvency role. I do have a bit of a resilient nature about me, and I did come straight into insolvency from university, as I've said. It doesn't seem to be that way with a lot of the graduates or people that come into the role as an intermediate stage. I do feel like I have a desire and a passion for doing what I do. That passion's even greater knowing that I can help businesses and directors and educate them on how a business should trade and the best way to avoid insolvent trading in future cases. I am fluent in 2 languages, being Arabic and English, which means I am first person to go to with a lot of our Arabic speaking clients, and it's rewarding in the sense that when I deal with people who are first generation Arabic speaking and they've sort of tried to make their own means of themselves in this country and create a business and a life for themselves, it's very satisfying for me to help them through that process, to tell them it's either not the end of the world or help their businesses trade out of the mess that they're in and show them a better light forward. I've been at OBP for over 2 years. The environment here is very relaxed and friendly. We like to create a environment that's relaxed, given that we're such a intense industry and the people that we deal with going through these hardships. So being able to have a clear mind when we're having these conversations is essential, and we at OBP do a great job in facilitating that for our staff. We have a great culture and we have a lot of fun, given that the work that we do can be stressful at times. So as a team, Clement and I's team, we're made up of 8 staff members, and the 8 staff members we have on board at the moment are probably the best team I've had in the 8 or 9 years I've been in insolvency. We work very collaboratively with each other. There's a great group of little mini partnerships that happen throughout the team to get jobs moving along. What that means is there's enough support in place to help businesses and companies either trade out of the financial mess that they're in or find other ways to satisfy various stakeholders in the liquidation that we're doing for these directors. Part of the reason why I joined Ibrahim Parma just because I feel like my values align with the values of the partners and staff. I'm very honest in the dealings I have with people, which means when I meet with these directors and people before any particular appointment, I like to give them the rundown and the ins and outs of what the job may contain, what to expect or not to expect, and not blindly take on a job for the purpose of accepting a new job, but tell them what to expect along the way so that they have enough information to make the decision for themselves as to whether that might be the right option for them. And if it isn't, then there's other options there. We always try and find ways to help these directors. It's never one size fits all approach with these companies and the jobs that we deal with, and essentially it's about helping them find the best way to come out of the financial mess that the company is in, but also try and appease the stakeholders and the creditors that have been affected along the way as well. Being a family man, I have a lovely wife and 2 beautiful children, and a lot of the directors and people that we meet in our jobs, given that we work in a SME market, these people are also family people who have started businesses, and obviously these businesses may or may not have been successful somewhere down the line and have come into the pressures and the difficulties that they're facing at the moment. Having that understanding, being a family person myself, I can relate to the stresses and the difficulties that they're facing, and certainly having that empathy means that I can provide the advice that I would want to receive myself if I was on the receiving end of what they're facing. Given the passion and drive I have for helping people and businesses and the success we have at Ibrahim Parma in doing so in an insolvency space, I do see myself in this industry in the long term and hopefully as a liquidator one day. To have a Sharks jersey in the background. I know, I tend to do that. I waffle on a bit. It's an accountant thing. Okay, can we start again? Yeah, extract value.
Extract value from me.
Can I say it's the best team that I've worked with?
If you believe that, if that's the truth.
It is the truth, yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
yes, that's perfect.
Yeah. I know, it is really good.
Why don't we switch positions? No. But it's at the end.
Okay, right.
I'll say it again. I think I've muffed that one. Oh, I looked at you again. I looked at you again at the end. I gotta say it again.
Because you're looking for approval.
Maybe you should sit.
I know.